The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Vision New England's monthly webinar series. We're really excited that you have decided to invest the time to be here today, and we have a fantastic guest here. And we're really excited to see what God has in store for you, and hope that you'll be blessed with what is presented today. It's a very informal webinar, so meaning if you had any questions and wanted to interject during the webinar, feel free. There are a couple ways you can do that. Maybe I should step back. My name is Michael Froning, and I am the Marketing and Communications Director at Vision New England, and I will be facilitating the event throughout our guest's webinar topic. And if you had any questions, there's a couple ways you could do that. We'll interject them right away during the presentation, because really this presentation is all about making sure that you get what you need and you're in managing your volunteer experience and looking at your volunteer experience at your church. So feel free to type in those questions. There's a couple ways you can do that. There is a questions box where you can literally type it in and submit it, or you can also submit a chat, maybe a shorter, quick snippet that you might want to ask Keith as we move forward. So we will also be cognizant of the time and be good stewards of the time that God's given us. So we'll do our best to end at 12:45. There will be plenty of time at the end to ask questions as well. So if you have that and would rather wait, you can do that as well. Without further ado, we're really excited to have Keith Tolley with us today. Not only is he the lead pastor at Greenfield Alliance Church, but he's also got tons and tons of experience and years in leading in management, not only in the nonprofit world and for-profit world, but also throughout New England as a consultant through Vision New England. So he spends a lot of time on the road with many churches and helping them kind of grow and become more effective as a church and organization. So Keith, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
And I'm going to hand you off, Keith, so that you'll have control of the slides. So give us 1 sec, everyone, and we'll be doing that. So here we go. You should have it, Keith.
All right. So tell me when you see my slides.
I do. You should be good to go.
Okay, great. Hey, again, thanks, Mike. Welcome, everybody. I thought I'd start our time off by sharing with you something that we found, one researcher's answer to this question that you see on the slide. And it's the question, why do lay people leave ministry? In the book Feeding and Leading, which some of you may have read, author King Gangle, I hope I didn't butcher his last name, he shares with us his research that he has found. And in that research, what he's uncovered is 10 key reasons why lay people walk away from the work in ministry that they've been doing. So he's cataloged these 10 reasons, and I thought I'd just start our time off by sharing those with you. And just as a note, everything that I'm going to walk through this afternoon we'll have in a companion study guide or work guide that Mike will make available to everybody who participates, and it'll come as an attachment hopefully tomorrow. So anything that you miss or that you didn't get notes on, we'll make that available for you. So here's Ken's 10 reasons why lay people leave the ministry. He starts by saying that willing people become overworked and burned out. Another reason is that volunteers don't receive much needed help. A third reason that he found in their research was that lay people have personal and spiritual needs of their own, which really aren't being met in the framework of their ministries. The fourth reason is we do not adequately show appreciation for their work. The fifth reason that Ken found was that volunteers have not, or lay people have not been provided proper equipment and materials. They have not been trained adequately for the ministries they have been asked to carry out. Friction has actually developed between or among the workers in a given ministry area or team. They have lost interest, enthusiasm, and commitment for the ministry. supervision is inadequate or perhaps even abrasive. And then finally, evaluation has not been carried out or results have not been identified as a positive thrust for ministry improvement. And I'm sure for most of us, we can probably relate to one or more of these reasons that are listed here. And I also think that this listing can give us some insights as to the kind of system or systems that we might want to put into place within our churches to help ensure that we proactively address the needs that are highlighted and on this particular list. And so in our time together, the brief time that we have this afternoon, what I want to do is I want to share with you a composite of some of the things that churches and church leaders within our region are doing to help maximize the effectiveness of the volunteer experiences that they're having in their churches. And based on what we've been seeing, as well as the experiences of a number of other leaders and researchers who we've talked with or read information from, it's pretty clear that the morale and performance levels of the people on our teams are at their highest when four things are in place, four things. The first is that everybody knows exactly what is expected of them. The second thing is that their roles are aligned, hopefully, with their giftedness and their passion. Third kind of premise or thing to maximize morale and performance is that they have the proper training, knowledge base, and support to accomplish what's being asked of them. And they're recognized or rewarded for their efforts and their achievements. So these are four key premises behind maximizing the effectiveness of the volunteer experience. And what we have continued to find in the work that we've been doing and in the research that we've reviewed is that the churches who take these things seriously and put systems in place to ensure that these things are happening tend to have a much higher level of participation, effectiveness, and retention of volunteers. So that seems to be true in the research and the readings that we've been doing. Now, as we look to implement a system across our church that incorporates these four premises, there are a handful of guiding principles that we believe will be helpful to inform and drive the development and execution of this particular system. So let me just share with you just a handful of guiding principles that we would want you to consider as you're looking at a system in your church to help facilitate these things. And again, Mike, if any questions come up, please feel free to stop me along the way. The first guiding principle is that we need to be realistic. When we look at developing ministry positions and assignments, it's really important that we're sensitive to how much time and effort and participation people can realistically put into the work that we'll be asking them to do in support of the ministries of the church, because they do have life outside of church and church ministry. So be realistic as you're doing this. The second is that we need to be clear. When we look at developing ministry positions and assignments, we really need to strive for clarity in the definition and the descriptions of what's expected, when it's expected, and how it's expected to be accomplished. Third, we really need to be consistent. We need to strive to be consistent. When we look at developing ministry positions and assignments, it'll be important that we're consistent in how we define these things, how we determine expectations, in the language that we use, and in the ways that we communicate. Fourth, and this is something we strive over and over again to re-emphasize, don't overcomplicate things. Keep it simple. When we look at developing ministry positions and assignments, we want to do everything that we can not to overcomplicate what we're trying to do and what we're trying to communicate. So whenever possible, we want to make things as simple to understand and execute as we possibly can. And then the fifth kind of guiding principle in developing the system is, with increasing responsibilities comes increasing expectations and demands. So what is expected of the leaders of a ministry team will look a little different than what is expected of our entry-level ministry positions. So if we're creating positions that give increased responsibility and authority to people, they will need to understand clearly that more will be expected from them excuse me, along the way. So these are just a handful of guiding principles for you to consider as you're looking at the system that you currently have in place or a system that you might want to build and put in place. Now, what I'd like to do at this point is look at the 4 premises or necessities that we talked about earlier and kind of unpack what they actually mean for us as leaders and for our teams. Now, we'll start with the first premise. What we said basically is that the morale and performance levels of the people in our teams are at their highest when everyone knows exactly what is expected of them. We have this quote from Jay Pearson at CCI. He says, the greatest sin in volunteerism is in not adequately defining the tasks to be completed. Before approaching a volunteer, the following elements of the job should be determined: the exact job, the timetable, the final results desired, and the working relationships. And we think that's a great reminder for us, especially as we're starting to build these systems. So if it's true that it's important for our team members to know what is expected of them, then this really raises the question for us, and that question is, what is then our responsibility to our team members as their leader? What is our responsibility around this? And what we think is one of the key roles is that we have to do everything that we can to clearly define to these folks what is expected of our volunteers, to include things like these are the specific duties that they have. This is the commitment that we'll be asking of them. So things like, this is the kind of training we're going to ask you to participate in. These are the meetings that we're expecting you to attend. The timetable for their responsibilities, things like how long they're going to be in the position, how often they will be expected to perform these responsibilities, as well as the results that we hope they will be able to accomplish in their position. So that's defining clearly what we expect of them, but along with that, we think it's also important that as leaders we clarify for our volunteers what they can expect from us. Things like, the coaching or the training that they can expect from us, the support that they can expect to receive from us. And to help do these things and to lay these things out, one of the most important tools in our toolkit for our team members is a very simple, even one-page job profile that will answer these questions. And let me just share with you some categories that you might want to consider having in the job profiles that you lay out for your ministry personnel. A job profile can provide information related to, just a statement about the purpose of their position and where it fits in a particular team, what the reporting relationship is, who they're going to report to in this position, or who is the team leader for that, the duties and responsibilities that they're going to have, the qualifications for the position, things like the required skills, the giftings, the experience, the knowledge that's needed, a description of how long you're asking them to be in that job and what time requirements are being asked of them, and something else, a place on the job profile for them to sign acknowledging and accepting that they do understand the information that's on the profile and they do agree to that. But again, a key for us on this is, let's please keep it simple. This can just be a very simple document, not something that's filled with all kinds of different levels of details or expectations. So that's in the area of knowing what's expected. Any questions or concerns on that?
None so far, Keith.
Okay, great. Let's continue. Our second key premise is this, if you remember. The morale and performance of our team members are at their highest when their roles are aligned with their giftedness and their passions. In his book, The Volunteer Revolution, Bill Hybels from Willow Creek made this statement. He said, we need to understand what sustains volunteer energy over the long haul. The first key, to align oneself closer and closer to authentic areas of passion and spiritual gifting. With this being true, we would contend that as leaders, we have two key responsibilities to help facilitate this particular premise with our volunteers. The first is this. It's really our responsibility to make sure that we have a process in place that helps people discover and discern their area of giftedness, passion, and ministry fit. And it's also a responsibility for us to ensure that we have a process in place for recruiting, interviewing, and placement that is based hopefully more on fit than based on necessity. Now, granted, there's going to be times when we call upon people to temporarily serve in positions or roles that may not fit their greatest passions or their best fit. But in general, I think a guiding principle is that it's important for us to do everything we can to seek to identify and connect people to an opportunity to serve that matches their gifting and their ministry desires. And to help us accomplish this, we would like to suggest to you 5 tools that you could put as part of your system if you don't already have these in place. Let me just go through these real quickly. The first tool in aligning gifting and passion with fit is assessment tools and some kind of spiritual gifting inventory or assessment that people can take. And here's just some of the more popular ones that we're seeing out there in churches. There's the SHAPE assessment tool that's from Saddleback, Strength Finders, which is a Gallup product, Spiritual Gift Inventory, which is from Lifeway, Network, which is out of the Willow Creek folks, and then the DISC inventory. So an assessment tool. And a second tool in our toolkit for this area is the interview process. It's helpful for aligning people with the right positions. And a key part in the interview process is defining and developing some specific, simple but specific questions that we can ask and talk with people about potential opportunities for them. So it'd be helpful to develop a handful of specific interview questions that provide insight into a candidate's skills, their gifting, their experiences, and their knowledge to see if they are compatible with the ministry position we have open. So the interview process is a key tool to consider. A third tool in our toolkit that can be helpful for aligning people with the right fit is what we call first serve opportunities. These are ministry opportunities to help people who are exploring ways to personally serve in our church and places they can experience what it's like to serve with us. So these first serve opportunities may include things like work days, special work days that they can participate in, special projects or initiatives that they can be a part of, and even what we call try it out opportunities. So ministry opportunities that only require a limited commitment that will give them an idea of what it's like to serve in this area. Now, fourth tool is, and we believe this can be very helpful in ensuring that the right people are in the right positions, is a centralized system for openings and people. Regardless of the size of our church community, it can be very helpful for us to have a centralized place where current information about people and about positions is maintained, and that can provide guidance and recommendations to connect the right people with the right ministry opportunities. So some kind of centralized system. And then the fifth tool is what we call stair-step opportunities. And what we mean by this is providing multiple levels of positions of increased responsibility and influence within your ministry delivery system that will provide opportunities for the people in our churches to be further challenged and grow. So as an example, you might set up your ministry structure to include an entry level for ministry opportunities, a team leader level, a director of ministry level, a staff level, and even a board member level. So a stair step for opportunities. Now, the third key premise that we talked about is this. Yeah, go ahead.
Quick question before we move on to point 3. Wayne asks a really interesting question. How important is cross-pollination? Encouraging volunteers as they try to discover their giftedness, encouraging them to try different teams and serve in different areas so they could get a better feel for where their fit is in the church.
Sure, that's a great question, Wayne. I think it's very important that you do some cross-pollination. The caution is that we want to be careful about people just window shopping and kind of going in and out and going in and out and going in and out at different, and that becomes a little more disruptive. But yeah, I think that based on fit and based on kind of skills and gifting and things like that, I think it's a great guiding principle to try to do that cross-pollination across multiple opportunities. Totally agree with you.
That's all we had.
Okay, great. So here's the third, and again, I'm trying to be sensitive to the time. Mike, the third premise that we talked about is this: the morale and performance of our team members are at their highest when each member has the proper training, the proper knowledge base, and the proper support to accomplish what is being asked of them. And with this being true, then we would contend that as leaders, to help facilitate this, it's really our responsibility to ensure that each of our team members has the necessary support resources that they need to accomplish their goals and their tasks. And here's just some examples of what we mean by that. In our toolkit, we want to make sure that our volunteers have the right training that they need, whether that's on the job, a combination of on-the-job training, classroom training, video training, whatever it is. So training, information, the right information that they need for their job in a timely manner, materials that they might need. So if they're teaching classes or they're involved in some kind of other ministry support, they have the right materials that are available, current, up-to-date materials, the right team support, the right level of team support so they don't feel like they're on their own. And then obviously the right funding. So the leader's responsible for, being the advocate for funding for the positions that the volunteers have that the leader is supporting and overseeing. So these are just examples of some of the toolkit items to ensure that that happens. Now the fourth premise, and this is our last one, is that the morale and performance of our team members are at their highest when each member is recognized and rewarded for their efforts and their achievements, and we celebrate this on a regular basis. So as a result, we really think that it's, as leaders, we have two key responsibilities that will be helpful in making sure this happens. The first is this: it's really our responsibility as leaders to help ensure that we put things in place in our system that intentionally recognize and celebrate team member achievements, as well as making sure that we continually tie the accomplishments of our team members and our volunteers to the overall church's mission and vision. Now, to help facilitate this, let me just share with you 3 tools that we'd like you to consider putting into place in your system. The first tool is some form of an evaluation that we would provide to our team members, and we're recommending that that happen at least once a year. So something a little more formal than saying, hey, you're doing a great job. Letting them know in this evaluation how they're doing in relation to the duties and the expectations that we have of them, and tying that evaluation directly to the job profile. So something very simple that can provide them with a summary of how they're doing against what is expected of them, and engaging in that conversation. A second tool for recognizing and celebrating their accomplishments is a personal communication that's directed to them in recognition of their service, of their value, and of their accomplishments. Things like sending them personalized emails, texts, cards, letters, connecting with them in person or on the phone, communicating to them directly how much they are appreciated and valued for what they're doing. And a great example of the time to do this, or one of the times to do this, is right after their very first time of serving with the church, personally thanking them shortly after their first service opportunity and welcoming them as part of the ministry team at the church. So personal recognition communications. And then a third tool is what we call celebration venues. And these are times when you get the team together to celebrate accomplishments and progress that has been made along the way. And this could be, we have seen these all over the region, things like having meals at someone's home, hosting that at a church facility, or even out in a public setting. And some churches do a volunteer celebration evening where they actually cater the meal. It's just a time of fun. They hear ministry testimonies of changed lives, and they publicly celebrate and recognize the accomplishments of the ministry teams. So job evaluations, simple ones tied to the profile, personal direct recognition communications that are done on a timely and regular basis, and then celebration venues where you publicly honor and esteem and recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of the volunteers and the ministry workers. So these are just some examples, what we're seeing across the region, of ways that we can recognize and celebrate the volunteers who are serving in our church communities. So just to summarize what we've talked about, what we're finding is that the morale and the performance levels of our volunteers and the people in our ministries teams tend to be at their highest when everyone knows exactly what is expected of them, when their roles are aligned as best as possible with their giftedness and their passions, when they have the proper training, knowledge base, and support to accomplish what we're asking them to do, and when they're recognized and rewarded for their efforts and their achievements, and we celebrate that with them. And what we have continued to find in the work that we've been doing and the research that we've reviewed is that churches who take these things seriously and put systems in place like this to ensure that these things are happening, they really do have a much higher level of participation, effectiveness, and retention with their volunteers. So Mike, trying to be cognizant of the time, that's what I have. That's just a brief summary of what we're seeing out in the region.
Thanks, Keith. I think there's some great nuggets there that we can feed on, and I guess maybe to kind of start the process off, I did have a quick question, and we're going to change screens here real fast. So as I give you this question, I'm going to kind of play around with this. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what you're seeing for evaluation process from churches to really evaluate and kind of look at their overall volunteer experience.
Yeah, for a lot of the churches, to be honest with you, this is something new. A number of the churches that we've worked with have done a pretty good job of doing staff, or full-time staff evaluations. But the idea of actually doing performance evaluations with volunteers and team leaders is something that is really now starting to catch on more and more as people see the wisdom of at least letting people know how they're doing. So the ones that we've seen so far are very simple, as opposed to something that I might have gotten at Gillette, when I was working in the marketplace. But very simple, tied directly to the categories of the job profile, and very kind of interactive, just as part of a conversation, and also including some goals, maybe a professional goal, a ministry goal, a personal goal of spiritual formation or something, and using it as a really great conversation or dialogue with the ministry team member or volunteer.
Yeah, interesting. Now, have you also, what do some of those processes look like? I mean, is it really more of a kind of an interview kind of opportunity where you bring the volunteer in? Is it a physical review that they fill out? I mean, what have you seen?
Yeah, well, we've seen both. So what we're starting to see is self-assessments tied to the leader's assessment as well. And so the individual has the blank evaluation. They fill it out and they give their perspective on how they think they're doing in relation to the tasks they've been asked to complete and the goals that the 1 or 2 or 3 goals that they were asked, that they formulated. And then the ministry leader or the director of ministry, if it's an evaluation of ministry leaders, is also filling that out, and then they're doing a comparison of that and just using it as a dialogue, not as formal as kind of an intense interview, but really just to spur one another on in terms of dialogue.
Yeah, great comment. Another quick question. Could you maybe offer some suggestions for a church with a low budget and a limited amount of resources in terms of some of the things they could do for recognition events and celebrations?
Yeah, I think the personal recognition, what we're hearing from the volunteers that we talk to, the personal, kind of direct connect, is almost is every bit as valuable as any large kind of public celebration. So that with a low budget, it really doesn't take much at all to have a process in place where the pastor or some of the leaders in the church are made aware of an individual just coming on and doing a ministry for the first time, and just sending them a note of thanks and sending them a note of recognition. So that's a very simple, and it costs nothing, or to send texts, or to make a phone call, or to intentionally see that person on a Sunday morning or something. In terms of the larger things, we have churches that are doing potlucks as an example. So people are treating the volunteers, people who are established members of the church are treating the volunteers. They're cooking for them. They're doing a potluck for them on the church campus or the church facilities, and they're just celebrating with them. And that doesn't cost a lot to do that. Some other churches are budgeting, just a small amount of money to provide recognition, symbolic recognition tokens, whether it's a thank you pen, or a note, a nice shirt or some, we're seeing all kinds of different things, a gift card, things like that.
Good stuff. One last question so far. Could you suggest any good training and support resources out there for equipping volunteers? Anything that you've seen that have been very effective?
Sure. The stuff, one of the things that we've seen that we feel is really good is the Willow Creek, the Bill Hybel stuff that he does on volunteers. There's a whole package that he has, or that Willow Creek makes available, and we've seen some churches using that with great benefit. So I think that would be one that I would recommend a church take a look at and preview and see how that works.
Good stuff. Well, Keith, we do thank you very much for your time. I think there are tons of nuggets there to really think about and apply in our volunteer experiences, and we do appreciate the time this week.
Thanks so much. It was great being with everybody. Thanks again, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And before everyone leaves, I just want to just highlight a couple of key things coming up on the docket here at Vision New England. Just a reminder that we will have another webinar next month on May 21st. We're really excited to have LaTanya Brown with us. She's the National Day of Prayer coordinator for the state of Massachusetts. She's going to talk a little bit about some key insights that she's seen that one can apply both from an intimate setting and also corporately to really kind of transform your relationship with the Lord. So we hope you can carve out some time and visit with us and hear what LaTanya has to share. And also, feel free to contact me if you have other ideas for webinar topics. We're always looking for new ideas for topics you might want to hear in our webinar series. Additionally, we will be conducting a brunch here in May as well on the 16th, and if you are a pastor's wife or you have a wife as a pastor and would like to encourage your wife to attend, it should be a great time of fellowship. We have a speaker coming from Ontario, actually, that will also share what the Lord's doing with her and in her life, so we hope you can attend that. And last but not least, we are trying to make these resources free as possible, and we also have quite a ministry toward pastors and or lay people out in the community that might not be able to afford some of the resources that we offer, and we are trying to see if you are interested in, the Lord leads you and you would like to donate to that ministry, we have the Equipping Encourage campaign that you can invest in. So again, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you next month.